All right. Today we are going to be completing pages 5 and 6. The title for these pages should be Geometry Relationships. So go ahead and turn to page 6. Title this page Geometry Relationships and make sure that you give it a page number 6. All right. So today we are talking about how lines and planes relate to each other. So lines can be, if we have two lines, they can either be parallel. When lines are parallel, that means they have to be in the same plane and they will never cross. So we usually draw two lines side by side that are not going to cross when we're talking about parallel lines. Or we can have lines that are perpendicular. If the lines are perpendicular, they are also in the same plane and they're crossing at a 90-degree angle. So when we have perpendicular lines, we always make sure that we add in the little 90-degree symbol to show that they are intersecting at a 90-degree angle. A third way that lines can be related is that they can be intersecting. This is the third way that lines can lie in the same plane. They are crossing each other, these two lines, but they're not crossing at a 90-degree angle. So if the lines cross at a 90-degree angle, we are always specific to say that they are perpendicular. However, if they're not crossing at a 90-degree angle, then we'll say they are just intersecting. The last way that lines can be related is if the lines are skew. Skew lines are lying in different planes, which means that even though they're not parallel, they will never cross. I like to think about skew lines as a room. So if you're thinking about the room that you're sitting in right now, think about maybe the corner of the room where the two walls are meeting. And that corner is like this blue line going up and down. And then look at the opposite wall across from that corner. And where the wall and the floor are meeting, there's another line. And those two lines will never meet. No matter how far we go, those two lines will never intersect. So that's when we have skew lines. All right, let's start thinking about planes. So when we are talking about two different planes, the planes can either be parallel, and just like when we have parallel lines, parallel planes do not cross. So we will draw that as two planes kind of stacked on top of each other, and even though they extend in both directions, they will never connect. Or planes can be perpendicular. Just like when we have perpendicular lines, our planes can be perpendicular. So think about this again as your room. The walls and the floor are planes that are crossing at 90-degree angles. So those planes are perpendicular, and they will always be drawn with that little perpendicular symbol so that you can see they are connecting at a 90-degree angle. And then last, if we have two planes that are intersecting but they're not intersecting at a 90-degree angle, then we describe them as intersecting. So for an example, as you're trying to draw these images, look over at the next image over. That gives you a pretty good example of intersecting planes and how they would be drawn. I sometimes forget to make that back line dashed, and so then I'll go back in and I'll put in points along that line to help me remember that that really is a dashed line. So there are a couple of different kinds of intersections that we can have. If we have two lines that are intersecting, then those lines are going to intersect at a point. So see how where these two lines cross, there is a point where they are intersecting. There's only ever one point where two lines intersect. When we have two planes intersecting, they are always going to intersect at a line. So when they come together, they can't meet at just one point because they're both extending farther and farther. And Even though these planes are drawn so that they are only this parallelogram shape, they actually are going to continue. So this plane would actually continue out this way farther and farther and farther. So that line would continue intersecting as far as those planes would continue in both directions. All right, on these notes, I would like you to go ahead and fold these notes back along that line between where it says intersecting. We'll give them a little fold so that we can fill out the back half of these notes. When we have points on a line, we call the points collinear if those points are on the same line. So for example, in this diagram that we have, points R, S, and T are collinear because I can draw one line and connect all 3 points. Or points P, Q, and R are all collinear because I can draw a line through those 3 points. If I was going to choose the points S, R, and U, those points would not be collinear because there's no way that I can connect S, Q, and U, or S, R, and U, and draw one single line to hit all 3 of those points. So those would not be collinear points. Similarly, coplanar, remember that co means together. So just like up here, collinear meant the points were together on the line. Coplanar means that they are going to be together on the plane. So when we have 2 different planes, often they will be shaded. So you can see that this darkly shaded plane is all one plane, and the lightly shaded plane is a different plane. So points F, D, B, and G, F, D, B, and G, are all coplanar. They are all lying in the plane R. Notice down here we have the R telling us that that is plane R. Or in plane P, we have points C, B, D, A, and E. Those points are coplanar in plane P. All right. Those are all of our notes for page 6. You can either tape in these notes, and to do that you could put 4 pieces of tape along this back side of your paper, so 2 in your corners, so one in each of your top corners, and then 1 along the edge at the top and 1 at the bottom. Or if you want, you can use glue and just put a little dot of glue in each of the 4 corners and tape this down onto, or glue it down onto page 6. On page 5, you're going to do some practice work naming intersections and relationships between lines and planes. So that work is going to go on page 5, and when you've completed it, you'll tape that work in on page 5.